Hi, my dearest of family. Today we are going to be talking about Vesta and Pallas Athene. They are going to be super important in 2026 due to their retrogression. They are going to be spending a long amount of time in the sign of Aries. So therefore, I believe I made a video about Aries cusp being the most affected in 2026 in everyone's chart. And one of the reasons is because, of course, Saturn-Neptune conjunction happens in the sign of Aries. And then now we can add Pallas Athene and Vesta to the picture. So let's get going straight away. First of all, I want to show you. Let me actually just come out of that, and then I can show you if you've got solar fire, how to check these dates. So you can go on the little icon there, and then you just choose here in sign tabulation, and then you choose Vesta, and then you choose the sign, and then you go either on add or replace. Replace if you have got already in the list of search conditions, and if you don't have anything, then just add it and then search. It's going to show you that Vesta, for example, enters the sign of Aries on May 13th, 2026, and then it will be there until February 16, 2027. So that's going to be one thing that we might want to be checking out. Of course, you can click on that and then you will get the chart to kind of have a feeling what exactly happens. So you will see that Vesta is right there. And then we've got Neptune there, we've got Pallas Athene there, we've got even the moon there when Vesta enters the sign of Aries, which is actually super important because basically the entire 1 year from a Vesta point of view is kind of like the moon is there for almost a year. Well, until not a full year, actually, it's only until February 2027. So imagine that from a Vesta point of view, the moon is going to be in the sign of Aries for about good 9 months. And what's also very, very important to mention is that we have got Saturn, Mars, and Chiron there as well. We're going to actually have the dispositor of Vesta, Mars, conjuncting Chiron. So you can see how emphasized that Aries cusp of your chart is. Super, 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 super important. So that's one of the chart that we want to be looking at. And then the other planet that, or the other asteroid that is going to be retrograde in the sign of Aries is Pallas Athene. So we choose Pallas Athene. I'm going to replace that. I'm going to go on the search button, and then you will be able to see that it enters the sign of Aries April 26, and then it will leave the sign of Aries on March 8th, 2027. So when we click on that chart, then we will see that Pallas is there. And then it's gonna meet Neptune, Saturn is there, Mars is there, Mercury is there, Chiron is there also. But you will see that the moon, for example, is in the sign of Virgo from a Pallas Athene point of view. So let's just discuss exactly what is happening in these charts to kind of have a bit of an understanding of what's going on. So I'm going to start with the Vesta element. What is Vesta? Devotion, sacred focus, self-sufficiency. This is the inner fire. Sacred sexuality as well belongs to the idea of Vesta as well. And Vesta might represent service, but also aloneness too. Even though she wasn't alone, because it was six ladies handpicked by one man, but they were alone from a relationship point of view until the age of 40. And also Vesta can represent self-respect too, but your inner hearth as well. Now we've got Pallas Athene as well, which represents strategy, wisdom, justice, resilience, patterns, pattern recognition, but also creative mind and independence as well. Pallas Athene represents where we have got maybe problems to solve. It's not just about warfare, actually, but she represents art and wisdom and even can represent father-daughter issues or someone who advocates for justice. Now, both of them are going to be in the sign of Aries. And Aries is a cardinal fire sign ruled by Mars. It is the sign of the self, action, initiation, courage, but also the pioneering spirit as well. So Pallas Athene, for example, in the sign of Aries, just do it strategists. It's an intelligent or intellectual warrior who charges in and finds pioneering solutions. Pallas Athene is highly motivated in the sign of Aries to succeed, to win. But she never goes into a battle without coming up with a battle plan, though. Now we've got Vesta here. And Vesta in Aries says devote to self-expression, self-actualization, self-mobility, self-empowerment. The sacred fire is all about that individual journey and independence. Of course, both of them gonna go retrograde, and I'm gonna give you the retrograde degrees as well in a short while. We can be checking it together. But, a retrograde period is when an energy looks like that it's moving backwards, but actually it is not, but it looks like it from the Earth perspective. But on a psychological level, that's when the energy turns inwards. So it represents reevaluation, review, refractions. Any word really which is connected to like the re words, like rewriting and stuff like that. So with Vesta, it's about reevaluating the devotion. You're going to have to be reviewing what you are truly committed to. Is your self-care or, is your self-devotion balanced? Where have you been giving your sacred energy away? You know, are your current boundaries supporting your inner fire? And Pallas Athene says, let's rethink our approach to our goals and justice, and let's review how we solve problems. Like, am I fighting the right battles? Are my methods truly wise or maybe just impulsive with the sign of Aries? And maybe we have to repattern our way of thinking or our creative process. Now these retrogrades are interesting in the sign of Aries because, Aries is usually a forward charge energy, but it gets slowed down. Aries is about initiating, but it looks like that we have to reinitiate or redirect the focus to the self before maybe external actions. And it's also about the courage to be able to look inwards. So now, of course, we can try to bring the scenarios together. And for example, on a global level, this is about rethinking leadership. Maybe it's a global focus on how leadership and justice are implemented. Aries is a leadership sign. Pallas Athene, for example, is about justice. And maybe we are reviewing our past military or strategic decisions with a focus on, whether the action was truly just or it was more aggressive or just self-serving. Yes, it could bring certain type of activism and advocacy as well, especially because of Pallas Athene. So activist movement, may turn inward just to kind of re-strategize them or redefine the core commitment and the cause of it. So there could be public figures who, championed a cause, for example, that are now being forced to defend or reevaluate their dedication. And, we've got two female energies in the sign of Aries. That's also interesting because Aries is more of a soldier. That's kind of like a manly energy. And now we've got two, one is very spiritual. Vesta is a very spiritual. And it's a spiritual mission as well. And Pallas Athene is kind of like a warrior princess. I call it kind of Xena energy. So there is quite a lot of discussions, most likely, about how female power, is expressed, and it looks like that maybe females are getting a little bit more aggressive or individualistic. So issues around female autonomy, self-sufficiency, that might be coming to the forefront, and maybe this is going to be a global debate. So therefore, of course, all these, who can, can a man swim at the females Olympic, who claims to be a woman and stuff like that. I think this might get heightened. But of course, Aries also can represent national identity, especially with Jupiter being in the sign of Cancer. So nations might re-examine their commitments to their founding principles or to their current military and even political strategies. And the retrogression would indicate more to do with internal debates. So kind of like two political parties are pulling apart, they don't agree on certain things. Let's say how much of our GDP should be allocated to, army and all those type of stuff. Now, of course, in a personal level, this is going to be highly important to look at where it falls in your chart. For example, this is going to be the second house for me. But, Vesta retrograde, for example, is your own inner fire. So are you focusing on yourself enough, or am I being a martyr? Or are you a master of your own energy? You may feel this need to pull back from commitments that might drain your vitality, your strength. And maybe this is also telling you that, there are sacred boundaries that cannot be crossed, and that's Vesta. So we're gonna have to be re-establishing those sacred boundaries, or you're gonna have to protect somehow your personal energy. So are you wasting your energy on things that you shouldn't be? And maybe you are going back to, or you are revisiting some old rituals or practices that helped you before, but maybe you are not going to be doing it in partnership anymore. You are going to be doing it alone. But it's about reigniting your passion. Old passions, self-care routines that were abandoned might come back. Uh, and also, maybe this is time to dedicate yourself to your personal calling. That's especially with Vesta. And Paula says, let's just come up with the plan. But Pallas Athene is about what type of a fight am I fighting right now? Maybe you realize that, your impulsive, kind of like head first approach to solving problems is not working. So I'm going to go back and see the patterns that I might have missed. But it's also the internal warrior type of energy. It's about dealing with your own internal battles. It's about conquering self-doubts that you are not a failure. So getting rid of old limiting beliefs. Or maybe you have had, long-standing issues with authority figures. Maybe it's a father, and you just want to be reclaiming your strength, your own intelligent, independent spirit. Even, this might be about revisiting some of the sport histories or, sport myth. And maybe there is going to be a lot bigger focus on sport myth. Maybe, the Biggest Loser is going to come back somehow, for example. Maybe just in different format, because Aries is not necessarily about losing weight. But did you see that with Pallas Athene, the moon was in the sign of Virgo, which is, of course, gonna bring up the topic of health industry. And with Vesta, the moon is in the sign of Aries. So I can imagine that, weight loss and all this type of stuff are going to become super important. Now, of course, we've got Saturn and Neptune, in the sign of Aries as well. And without that, it's difficult to speak about this combination. But of course, I have already made a video about them. So, Saturn is the taskmaster, the structure, the discipline, reality, consequences. It's about mastery. So, in the sign of Aries, it says, build a mature and responsible identity. Define your personal boundaries. Take concrete actions. And Neptune says, well, Saturn says to Neptune, please take a reality check on your dreams. Saturn says, please dissolve your illusions. Or, in a way, it says, we need proof. Pallas Athene says something similar as well, because that's strategy. And with Saturn Pallas, the strategy must be real, not just coming up with ideas. And then what Neptune does, which is the planet of dreams, illusion, spirituality, unity, confusion, we can idealize the self in the sign of Aries. Maybe we are dissolving limited self concepts, or, you're going to become that spiritual warrior, or, but Neptune has got the softening aspect. So Neptune is trying to solve the structure, trying to dissolve Saturn's rigid boundaries. And with Vesta, somehow they are kind of like on the same page to a certain extent, because Neptune provides the higher calling for Vesta's devotion. Then, of course, we've got Vesta, who is about sacred focus. I've given the keywords already. I'm not going to be repeating myself, but Vesta in Aries is about reclaiming sacred autonomy, reevaluating the way we commit to our image, self-image, our strength. It's about protecting our inner fire as well from all the external noise that is happening out there. So Vesta says to Saturn, let's commit to a vision. Let's dedicate ourselves to this commitment, to this new structure. And with Neptune, in a way, we give birth to it. And then we've got Pallas Athene, who says we're going to have to re-strategize the war for self. We have to rethink how we assert ourselves and what battles we choose. Because sometimes we might be choosing a battle that we cannot win. And sometimes we might be walking away from a battle that otherwise we would win anyway. But, maybe we are scared. So, the strategist, Pallas, is trying to navigate the fog of illusions, but also while respecting the rules. So now let's try to bring all four together. Let's start with on a personal level because it really feels like it's about self-mastery, to be frank. It's about growing up. It's about the test of reality. I feel like we are forced to build a real, tangible structure around our sense of self, our personal initiatives. And this means that we have to be taking disciplined adult responsibility, for who we are, what we start. And the lesson can feel very heavy or restrictive. But also there's a test of faith here. Maybe we're going to have to be dissolving the ego's fear and because Aries can represent the ego. And we're going to have to be acting from a higher place of purpose. And we're going to have to be able to act on our ideals. And the confusion can come as well, of course, if we are unable to kind of differentiate or we cannot tell the difference between self-destructive impulses and our divinely guided instincts. So we've got Vesta and Pallas in the mix, right? And Vesta says self-care, self-respect. So, like, are you trying to build a sanctuary where you truly feel safe or whole? Or are you abandoning yourself for an illusion? And then Pallas comes into the picture who says, let's retrain the mind to be both visionary and practical. It says that if you want to be yourself, it needs a major review. So the retrogrades are always asking us to pause and think before we initiate anything, a new project, or we are ready to tackle a challenge, especially when there is the planet of confusion and fear in the picture. Confusion, Neptune and Saturn is the planet of fear. So, Aries is the ram. So it requires a lot of courage to be a ram. But, we've got the structure of the elder, we've got the vision of the mystic, we've got the devotion of the high priestess, Vesta, and then we've got the wisdom of the warrior. So actually, I see this as quite a positive constellation, to be frank. Of course, it could bring some negative stuff as well. I mean, a lot of Aries energy is always a bit of a bit of it's screaming out loud, basically. Especially when Mars is in the sign of Aries and conjunct Chiron. I cannot help but to notice that Mars is very much of a fighter, and it is making a conjunction to the wounded healer. We are fighting not to get wounded. We are fighting to wound others, you know. So what it really feels, again, if we bring all of it together, Saturn is the structure, Neptune is the ideas, but it is having the pain in the picture. The actions that we might be taking is not driven by something pure. It is driven by kind of like an egotistical matter or an injury. But of course, Chiron represents the healing process as well. And it says that the healing process is unavoidable. If we don't want to heal, crisis is going to enter our life. And maybe that Saturn-Neptune conjunction are designed to expose this specific wound so that finally we can actually, integrate this. Negatively speaking, with Mars and Chiron, it's so easy to project our pain. And with Vesta, this is the Vesta chart. So we are focused on the pain. We are focused on the healing. And if you are avoiding dealing with your own anger, and then just projecting that onto, let's say, external structures or people, and then, it can lead to bitter resentment. It can feel like that we are the victim. And then we're going to blame the world. We're going to blame Saturn because it restricts. We're going to bring Neptune in, because it's chaos. We're going to kind of like blame the wounded leaders. So, or simply, we don't want to put on the boxing glove. And then we are going to be avoiding the conflicts because we are so afraid of triggering a wound within us that we refuse to fight any battle, even the battles that are about self-preservation. That's Mars in Aries. So, therefore, it could be talking to us about passivity and boundaries being crossed, emotional stagnation. I mean, globally, I mean, Mars Chiron signature, there could be a lot of focus on vengeance or ancestral wounds related to war and oppressions and even physical safety. So, unfortunately, negatively speaking, this could be quite a conflictual chart that the world is going to be focused on. But maybe this is just historical type of stuff, and or certain nations are quite reactive. This could be even toxic power abuse or the misuse of that masculine and feminine imbalances. There could be a lot of talks about that too. So very briefly, this is how I see the Vesta chart. And to be frank, the Pallas Athene chart doesn't necessarily look different at all. So, we will have also Pallas on 0 degree, of course, it's on the world axis. So that's why we are talking about quite a lot about what to expect globally as well. And like I said, globally, Pallas Athene could represent, strategies. And Mars being in the sign of Aries, you know, it's very much the same interpretation. Okay? But the Mars this time around is sitting on the midpoint of Saturn and Mercury. So, Saturn and Mercury is kind of like the lack of communication, or it's kind of like saying no to something. And then that is pissing me off. You know, I'm proposing something and then I get sad. Someone says no to me without kind of like listening to me or listening to my pain and all those type of stuff. So this is the story of Vesta um, and Pallas Athene. Now, we wanted to look at exactly, so Pallas Athene enters on the April 26th. And if we just go, a little bit further, then we can be, I haven't looked at exactly the stationary degrees, so we're going to do that now. So you will see that Pallas Athene already 16 degree. Pallas Athene is on 21 degree, but it started slowing down big time. So I'm just going to go further 1 week and then one more week and then 1 more week. So here you go. So it's going to go retrograde somewhere in August. It's going to go retrograde on 14th of August on 22 degree of Aries. So if you have got any planets in on 24 degree, now Pallas, that's the stationing degree there. It's awful that this is just over there. And then let's just look at the direct degree as well. It's gonna go direct shortly because Pallas Athene, if it's retrograde, it's retrograde approximately about 4 months. So it's gonna do it right here on 3 degree. Okay, so 3 degree is a very crucial degree on the 1st of December, and then we had the 22 degree of Aries. So if you have got any planets on those degrees, or maybe it's in Libra, Capricorn, or Cancer, then actually it becomes super important. What I would like to also mention is that when Pallas Athene goes uh, direct, it happens on 3 degree, exactly where Neptune was in Pallas Athene's ingress chart. So it is really about strategizing certain type of visions. Okay, and then moving on to Vesta. Vesta does exactly the same. So when it's retrograde approximately about 4 months. Okay, so I'm gonna move forward, and then we're gonna see that Vesta is gonna go retrograde also somewhere here on 24 degree. 25 actually. Oh, 27, 26. Okay, maybe 27. Here you go, right there. On 27 degree, on the August 26. And then it's gonna go back approximately about 18 degrees. So I'm guessing it's gonna finish the retrogression somewhere around 11 degree. Yes, 12 degree. So it's going to finish the retrogression on 12 degree of Aries. So if you have got degrees on 12 degree of Aries or 27 degree of Aries or Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn, then Vesta is going to play a very significant role for you. So if you would like to have a reading with me and see how all these 2026 energies are playing out for you, go ahead and let's book it, AstroViktor.com. But I would appreciate if you like the video, share the video with others, or potentially, I think even we can kind of do this collaboration on YouTube right now. So that would be lovely. Thank you very much, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye bye.